Greetings! It is I, Tantus Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome! It's time to continue our discussion on Werewolf the Apocalypse in the World of Darkness. I finished talking about, of course, the settings, the basic theme of Werewolf, all the information you need about basically to have a werewolf character and know a little bit of background. Let's dive into the storytelling aspect, being a storyteller, or in a way being a player. The storyteller is going to be vastly important because the story is going to be important to your players. You as the storyteller are going to have to craft this in such a way that is going to bring your characters, your players, into it. It is up to you to craft the world in it, the places, the events, the characters, and each of them should be intriguing and bring your characters better into this story that you're crafting. It is up to you to craft it however you wish to do so. The fact is, you can use real-world experience and events that you've encountered in order to build up these adventures. You could have the most mundane things end up being an interesting quest that you're driving out, that perhaps going and investigating something odd that's going on. It's not something innocuous like it would be in the real world. It's something supernatural. But you're using that basis of like, oh, the old sawmill's haunted. There's really some banes that have been infesting it, and that's what the problem is. But when you talk about the old sawmill is haunted, that seems so normal. The thing is, you can build this world fairly easily. We know real-world cultures, and this is a real-world setting. You can use those. The only culture that you have to know about is the one provided in the book, Garu culture. It's the one that's being introduced, and that's the one that you might have to learn differently. Otherwise, if we're in America, know American culture. I know American culture. I can integrate myself really easily into this game. You're creating, as a storyteller, everything in the world. Everything. And it might sound difficult to do, but as I said, using these real-world experiences, using the most mundane things as a starting ground that you're going to base a lot of stuff off, that you're going to do your story writing off of, are ways to make it a lot easier. Because the point of this is for both you, as the storyteller, and your players to have fun. You're going to have to spend a bunch of time prepping this game. The amount of time that you're going to have to spend prepping should be equivalent to the amount of fun that both you and your players have. Think of it that way. If you're not having fun, you're making a mistake. You're not doing something right. You're not allowing yourself to do it. You have to write and play around with the players in such a way that you're going to enjoy it. Now the thing is, you as a storyteller are going to have to try to maintain the interest of your players. You want them to be involved in the story that you're writing out, but you don't want to force them. Because both of you are working together in order to forge this story, that it is not just you. This is an interactive story. We are interacting together to forge this story together. Me as the storyteller, you as the players. You have to be ready to adapt this story to whatever actions your players are doing. You have to be ready either with ideas that you can use that are open-ended, ready to improvise, do anything of the like. The fact is, you don't want to shoehorn your players into one direction. When they feel forced, they stop having as much fun. You want them to have these options. Now, your story might call for going to a certain place, and this off direction might not work. Then you just have to figure out a way to get them back on path. You, again, don't want to force them. You want to bring forth little suggestions, little idealisms that make them want to get back on that path. You're basically tempting them into the direction you want. That's rather than forcing them. On the other hand, if you think you can improvise and your game allows for it, because it is difficult to improvise, whatever path they're going, you could go off on a different path entirely. You could make a left field. You usually want to stay along with the basic plot of the story. I've come up with a concept. That sawmill with the bane spirits in it. They might come up with a ridiculous idea in a total different direction in order to solve the problem than anything you were imagining. You could have maybe not been even thinking about the direction they take. If you wanted to, improvise a story around that, around this new way. It's going to end up the same way, them solving the problem, because this is a problem they want that you've established early on they want to take care of. You make it seem like they want to get involved in this. You make it that you put information out there that says like, oh, something's weird going on there. We should check it out. That's the getting them into the story that you're wanting to do. If they go and try to investigate something else entirely or look at something else in town, adapt it. That's also part of improvisation. You just have to figure out where your story is going using the basic information that you've put together when you prepped your game. Be prepared for a lot of different options, but also be ready for something completely different than what you were expecting. Now, as a storyteller, you get stories and ideas from lots of different places, but there are 3 general different types of stories: character-based stories, event-based stories, and of course, atmosphere-based stories. Character-based stories are based around a character. Now, traditionally, this is usually a villain, but this could also be a neutral party or someone that's an ally to the characters. Even if it seems appropriate, it could be one of the characters. That's a little rare, a little harder to pay off because you're focusing more on one of the characters, but it could be. Every event in this story, everything that's going on in the story revolves around this one character. Your players are basically filling out what's going on. Maybe someone's getting threatened to be killed by the worm because they have a prophecy about them that they want to be eliminated. Your players are tasked with protecting them. There we go. We're based around this character, which is probably more neutral or allied with your players, but you're attempting to stop them. Or some powerful black spiral dancer with a certain name, with certain abilities, is doing something horrible, some kind of ritual. Your characters have to go to stop them. We already have made this event-based by basically creating a villain, which they're basing everything in the story around. Event-based stories are basically that. They're focused around a single overacting event, something that creates all the story around it. Maybe some kind of event is going to occur and your job is to stop it, or something's going to occur and your job is to look into it, maybe to harness it, something like that, to cause an event, that there's something that you want to have happen and your job is to make sure it happens. It revolves this story around this event. Whether it occurs or not, again, it's entirely in your story, and entirely if it's proper to have it occur or not, and up to your players by the actions they do to either cause or stop it. The last one, which is technically the most difficult, but the best one to try to do, is atmosphere-based stories. These, you're focusing on an atmosphere that you're attempting to create. Something like horror is traditionally the easiest to do, but whatever atmosphere you're attempting to create, you're going to be basically using your players in order to create it. You're not just doing it on your own. You're springboarding off of the actions that your players are doing in order to create this atmosphere. And it will be important to create this kind of dialogue between you two, making it, even if it's unspoken. You're going to need to learn what your players are good for in this, how well they are bringing into this ambiance, this atmosphere, and adapt yourself appropriately to draw them in. They might be better at establishing certain portions of it, and therefore you have to react appropriately to build this atmosphere. That's why it's more difficult, but it draws them in the best. Now, stories have a number of elements. They have a theme, usually, some kind of pace. They'll have a beginning, middle, and end. It is your job to craft all sections of the story appropriately. When we talk about theme, it's some kind of overarching concept that you're going to be using in order to stick around with the story. It's an underlying portion of the story, some kind of thing that you're saying about the story that you want to maintain without it. Maybe it is a horror theme. There are so many different types of themes out there. For example, if I'm saying the horror theme, I want to try to maintain that throughout my story. My interactions with my players will drive the theme especially. That's where a lot of this thing, because, regardless if you're telling for atmospheric-based story, you might still have a character-based story with horror theme. It's possible. You're trying to interweave this into what you're building in the story and working with your players in order to maintain this theme. They won't necessarily know what your theme is, but you should react to what they are doing in the game appropriately to what the theme is. It's basically giving you a guideline of a lot of the actions you should take. Now, this doesn't mean there aren't many other themes that are out there. Werewolf the Apocalypse actually has its own themes built into it that you can easily use. It has the theme of the inside versus the outside, effectively thinking of this that they have this beast on the outside but also must deal with the real world, and this conflict between the inner turmoil of a werewolf and attempting to exist in a world that is the modern world is an important theme amongst them. The turmoil between body and soul and beast and civilization. In a similar way, there's also the conflict between the requirements of family, of tribe, of werewolf, the requirements of Gaia, these things combined, versus the sense of self and requirements of self that a Garu might have, where their obligations for Gaia and other Garu end, and where their obligations for themselves kind of balance out. See, that's a theme, a common theme of this conflict that you're using. Themes can be pretty complex when you look at it this way, and it's all going to depend on how you want to portray your story. So that's it for today. I talked about some of the basics of storytelling you're going to need to. Now this discussion here is very open-ended, because it all depends on the way you run your game. But the point of talking about it now is to give you an idea of how you want to go about things. Just a little bit of hint of how you want to dive into the storytelling and begin doing it. Because this is a very role-playing centric system, and it's important to be a storyteller in it. A lot of other systems have higher dice that you're relying on for a lot of these things to help you establish things. They built it in a different way. This one, you're going to have to rely on those skills to tell the story, and I'm helping you forge them. In the next episode, I'm going to talk about some more of the elements of the story that you're going to want to include in, and move into the actual talking about storytelling, about running these games. But regardless, if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It shows support the channel, the empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, go check out my Patreon, link description below. I do recommend checking out the Werewolf RPG and Gameplay Media Facebook group. I'm a member of it. I put stuff up on there. Other great stuff is up on there. I do recommend checking it out. But until the next time, I bid you farewell.